Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I said it again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Under Construction. This is episode 59. I am your host, Ellis, otherwise known as Train Man, or the Admiral, depending on where you hail from. And today we're back on Tolbrand, as we should be, as we always are. I'm recording this on a Friday, so this may come out late. I had to take the FE exam on Thursday, so I decided to put this off a little ways. And I apologize for any inconvenience or disappointment this may have caused you guys. And if that wasn't enough, be further disappointed by the fact that I received a copyright citation for something on the No Copyright Sounds livestream channel. Which, I don't think they're living up to their name, so for now, we're going to forego the music. Did I accidentally create this with a 5-meter grid? I did. We're going to forego that, and we're going to just do things quietly for a little while. Which, it's a shame then that we only have a couple of comments, but they are things I can harp on about, and of course I can talk about things like the FE exam. For those of you who do not know, the FE stands for the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. It's something that every engineer must take at some point in their career, usually shortly after they leave college in order to get a certification, which then will help them on their way. It's really more of a formality. Having my job was not in the least contingent on me taking the FE exam, but it is something. It's an accreditation that you have to take, or that you should take, I should say. Again, nobody's forcing you to, although your boss might. Definitely my coworkers were anxious to have me take it, because, again, it's just sort of the thing that you do. And so I don't think I passed. But that's okay, not everybody passes on the first try. So my only issue is that I paid for the test. It's, it's the kind of thing where you pay for it and then you go in and you do it, and if you pass, you pass, and if you fail, you can just pay for it again. I don't think there's a sort of statute of limitations on how often you can take the test, or, that sort of thing, but the test is fairly rigorous. There's a lot that goes into it with regard to the different kinds of engineering. So I took the civil engineering one because I'm a civil engineer, as you would probably figure. That's the one I take. There isn't a specific traffic engineering one, it's just general civil engineering, which means that there were plenty of things that I didn't quite, I wasn't too familiar with. Like, I'd seen them in school, but I didn't really retain them, and certainly I haven't used them since then. So I was, not blindsided, but there were plenty of things on there where I just, for whatever reason, I just couldn't, or I didn't know. And there were some other things on there where I thought I did know. Like, there were some physics questions, which generally physics has been a fairly strong subject for me. But I couldn't do it. I don't know why. I buckled under that pressure, I guess, because I just couldn't figure my way around a couple of these problems. I couldn't get an answer that they were looking for. And I really wondered, I was really wondering what my mistake was, and I knew that I could do that. I knew that I could do the question, so I made the mistake of continuing to try to do the question, which, for those that are very familiar with timed tests, you know that you really got to go through, you've got to do the easy ones first, and then you come back for the ones that you were struggling with, and I made the mistake of not totally doing that. Tane, are you okay? Tane? Okay. So that definitely cost me, because there were some things that I know I could have figured out given more time, but I didn't have the time to do them because I'd spent tons of time on other problems that I thought I could have figured out more easily. So, yeah, shame on me for part of it. I, wasn't adequately prepared. I didn't know everything I needed to know, and I didn't perform, or I didn't do the proper procedure on the test. So, that's what happens. You do, tests like this, major tests, they really are as much about knowing the material sometimes as they are about knowing how to take a test. Because there are strategies and there are tactics and there are, things that you can do and there are ways that you can think that will help you find the right answer quicker, as opposed to sort of fumbling around in the dark trying to look for the right answer, or even worse, taking a guess. Not to say that taking a guess is necessarily bad if you're on a multiple choice test, which most of the questions on the FE exam are multiple choice. If you're on a multiple choice test that isn't the SAT, I think, because they score it differently, you're better off just putting an A guess for a question you don't know, because maybe you'll get it right. Especially if it's an educated guess, especially if it's well, I think it's got to be between, these two things. You've got a 50-50 shot. Your gut says you'll get it wrong, but the odds are, pretty even. So, that's test-taking strategy for you. The reason I bring up the SAT is I think, they may not do it this way anymore because they've changed the SAT since I took it, but it used to be that if you didn't answer a question, it did not count against you. It was only wrong answers that actually hurt your score. Now, I don't know if they still do it that way, so don't go and take the SAT and use that advice. Talk to your guidance counselor or take SAT exam prep to figure out what you need to do. Again, I'm none of those people. I can tutor, but I'm no SAT exam prep guru. So, don't necessarily just take my word for it. But, yeah, that's how they ran it. I thought that was an interesting take on things because it meant that the time limit didn't really matter. What mattered is that you got the questions right, which, again, very interesting take on it. Not sure if it's better or worse than the typical, the ones you don't mark are wrong sort of tests. I could advocate for it by saying that, it makes sense that the time limit doesn't necessarily matter. The time limit is there just to keep you from taking an eternity on the test. The questions are there for you to solve them, and you solve as many as you can within the allotted time, and, because in real life you might, or you wouldn't necessarily be under that kind of pressure. So, maybe it makes sense to do it that way. But, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, it doesn't make sense to do it that way because of other reasons. Like, they're trying to figure out what you know, and it really, if you can sit there, you might not be showing off just what you know. Did I do it again? Why is this? That one is. That one is. Are all these? Why are these 5-meter grid? Okay, the old ones are. Why is this doing this? But yeah. Test taking 101. I could do a class. Would you guys attend a class? Just kidding. We wouldn't be doing much test taking talk. This is where I do all my test taking talk. This is the section of the show where I give my life advice. And by section of the show, I mean this is the whole show. You guys know the tangents I go off on. But anyway, that's that. Yeah, I don't think I passed. It's not a big deal, except I'm out, I think, like $250, which is, not insignificant. It's just, it's annoying. But on the bright side, because of the fact that it's for work, I get that day paid. I didn't go to work. This was Thursday. I didn't go to work. I got paid for it anyway, because that's just how it goes, because it is technically something you're doing for work. So, they pay for that. And, whoops, that's the wrong one. I meant to move the radius up, not the sensitivity. And that's still way too sensitive. I think I'm going to keep this level of water. I might have said that before, but I think I'm going to keep this level of water. So, oh, whoops, let's do this. Sorry, hold on, just thinking about this. Yeah. It's a work thing. I'm doing it to get better at my job or to test that I'm this good at my job. So it's something that my job will pay for because it has to do with my job. Now, I'm not sure if every company does this. Maybe the smaller ones don't, I would assume, because they don't have the overhead. Like, they don't have the budget to spare to do something like that. But it is very nice that my company does. So, the other thing is, and this really didn't contribute to my performance in the test, but the other thing is that I didn't realize that it was a digital test. I thought I was going in there to take some enormous paperback test, and I don't know necessarily why I thought that. It was just never told to me that it was a digital test. I don't know. I don't know how I never got that message. I never got that memo. But for those of you thinking of taking the FE exam, it's a massive digital test. Now, I don't know if it's graded automatically on the back end. I don't think it is, because the results get sent away for 7 to 10 days, and then you find out if you passed or not, which I am not necessarily looking to find out that I didn't pass. But once I do, then I will go and I will schedule the review class, and I will schedule the exam again. And that's the kind of thing where you really, see, the fact of the matter is, the farther I get away from my college, diploma, the farther I get away from walking across that stage, the less I remember. And I'm sure all of you, especially those of you who have to deal with summer breaks, still understand where I'm coming from. If you come back and you're expected to know the things that you learned last year, you don't really know a whole lot. You might have retained some of it, but not all of it, and that can really be a bastard. So I decided that I was going to take it pretty soon after I got out of college. Now, this was a few months. It's been a few months since I graduated, but the fact of the matter is it's still relatively soon, and there were a few things that I recognized and went, oh, I'm glad I still remember this from my classes. And there were plenty of things that I saw and I went, oh, I used to know this. Like, I knew this. If you had asked me this, 4 months ago, I might have been able to get it. And then there are the things that I thought I knew and I just straight up didn't. The things that, effectively were gigantic mistakes on my part for burning all of my time. But, that's that. Now, I'd like to share with you guys a project, because I might as well talk about something. So, most of you, if you're railroaders or foamers or whatever, you might be familiar with a film called The Titfield Thunderbolt. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a British film. It's set, I don't know, disclaimer, I haven't seen it, just watched the ad, and I was, oh, you know what, I talked about this. I talked about how I was, sort of disappointed by it. But it's set in the 50s or 60s. They've still got steam in service, and the railway line that is around this town, small town, is going to get shut down. And so they take matters into their own hands and they run the railroad themselves with this little dinky steam engine that they have, which is kind of cute, admittedly. So there is some, you might call it community opposition to this railroad, and eventually it costs them their engine. It's wrecked. So they have to steal a famous engine out of a nearby museum called the Titfield Thunderbolt, is the engine, to run the service on the day the inspector's coming to see that they're running the service properly. And it's a very interesting film, and it's mostly a comedy, and it's like, I've done my reading. I watched the ads. I didn't sit down to watch the whole movie because when I'd heard about the premise, I thought it was, they have a diesel and they swap it out for a museumed steam engine, which is really interesting. Which, that part is really cool to me. But it isn't like that. It's a steam engine for a steam engine, and honestly, that takes away a lot of the novelty for me. But I started thinking about what I could do to modernize that and Americanize it as well, not really as a consequence of me thinking it falls short because it's set in Great Britain, or the UK in general. I'm not sure exactly where it's set. But but because that's what I'm most familiar with. And if I'm going to write something, which now I am, spoilers, that's what I'm trying to talk about, I would rather set it in a place that I'm familiar with. So, and a place where I feel like this is more noteworthy, almost. Because if you think about it, the Titfield Thunderbolt, a modern version where they're swapping a diesel for a steam engine, is not too crazy in Great Britain, or in the UK. I keep just saying Great Britain, but the UK in general. Because they have a lot of affection for steam railroading out there still. And there have almost definitely been situations, now this is me speculating, but I'm certain there have been situations where a steam engine had to fill in. Because they're kind of all over the place. Maybe not on something major, but there was an instance with a steam engine running a timetabled service very recently, and even on mainland Europe, I believe there's areas in Poland where they still use steam engines in regular service. So, I think, I felt that transplanting the story to the US could really give it a lot more novelty, the kind of thing that I felt like Titfield Thunderbolt is missing. So, I started thinking about what I knew best, what railroad lines could do this, and, how they would pull it off. So you gotta think about it. So, you need a railroad line that is fairly backwater, that, that probably doesn't have a lot of traffic, so it would be in danger of being shut down. You need a motive for it being shut down, that isn't just money, because it would take money to run the passenger service in general, and that money would probably not come from anywhere. Like, it wouldn't materialize with people wanting to run the service. That wouldn't really change anything. So it can't just be money. And so I thought, okay, well, the most common problem for railroads, especially ones that are on the verge of being abandoned in this day, is rail trails. So I started thinking about, okay, how do I apply a rail trail to this situation? Well, obviously, the thought would be rail trail. People want to shut down the railroad to make a trail. Okay, so we have a railroad that we want, or not one in particular, but the general profile of one. One that is fairly backwater. Whether it does or doesn't run passenger service at this point in time is irrelevant. What matters is, could it be threatened by people wanting to build a bike trail? So, again, can't be something well-traveled. Probably has to touch some fairly urbanized, or at least, liberal and upper-class areas, I would think. I don't see too many conservative areas polling for rails to trails, but I'm not sure about the demographic. It may really just be more of an urban versus rural thing, because the rural people don't do a whole lot of bike riding into distant areas, so it doesn't matter to them. And so the urbanites are the ones that actually care about making rail trails. The people that actually would use them. And really, you need a density in order to do that. I don't know, though. So I need to find an area where it's a sort of backwater line, but it's not in the middle of nowhere. It's in an area where there is significant population density, or at least decent population density. Now, where would I find that? Okay. So I started looking around the Northeast, because that's what I'm most familiar with. The MBTA lines, because of the fact that they are government funded, I don't think would necessarily make a great candidate for this, because the MBTA is not really on the verge of losing anything. So, and maybe I could see that. And I looked around and I thought, okay, maybe one of the MBTA lines that's less used, but then I sort of ruled them out and figured, now that isn't backwater enough. There isn't little going on there. There's too much. There's too many people commuting into Boston that would ever make an MBTA line a losing proposition. Same thing with a Metro North line. There are too many people that use that area, and Long Island Railroad as well. They may be urbanites, they may be fairly built-up urban, potentially liberal areas where you might see this kind of bike trail sentiment come in, but if people use the train, then that's never going to win out. So you need to look for areas where the train isn't used. So I started looking at lines where either there is there either is not passenger service and it's a relatively disused freight line, or there is passenger service but really only in the form of a scenic railroad. And the first place I looked was Cape Cod. And so Cape Cod Central Railroad is a scenic railroad. There's also a little bit of freight service out there. And it has, moderate ridership for the fact that it's out there on the Cape. It runs through some fairly scenic and decent looking areas. But there are rail trails already attached to it. The line to Provincetown has already been converted. Well, long ago it was shut down. And now it's pretty much just a trail. So I started thinking about that. I went, okay, well, what about this area here? Would there be a petition to turn it into a rail trail? And, sure enough, I figured that there would be. I don't recall if I actually went looking for one. But I figured that there would be, that it fit the criteria that I was looking for. But I couldn't find a museum. And see, again, the sort of kingpin in the whole operation was the fact that I was looking for an area where the diesel run service could get supplanted by a steam locomotive. And Cape Cod Central Railroad wasn't it. The nearest steam locomotives are at Edaville. And that surely wouldn't do the trick. For those who don't know, Edaville is 2-foot gauge. So I started looking elsewhere. I looked at other places. Now, the Naugatucket, and I started looking at museums as well, just to sort of get my bearings. There aren't too many railroads in the Northeast that can run steam, or that even have a steam engine in their collection. For a time, the Boston Museum of Science had Jefferson, Boston and Maine 3713, as part of their collection. They had him on display. And that would be a huge engine, in a literal sense. And in a figurative sense, but the fact of the matter is, 3713 is out at Steamtown and wouldn't be showing up here for any reason anytime soon. So that was out. I couldn't get that close to Boston anyway, as established with the MBTA lines. So I started looking other places. Now, again, there aren't too many railroad museums that have that. The Conway Scenic does. And, maybe that would do it. But you couldn't steal a locomotive from that museum to run the railroad nearby because they're owned by the same people. So that was out. That couldn't be done either. It did kind of fit the other criterias, though. It's up there in New England. It may not be the most urbanized area, but I could see people pushing for a trail on it. And then the other railroads up there that actually run steam are narrow gauge, 2-foot gauge, or the Booth Bay Railway Village, and that's way out there. And I said, no, that wouldn't be any good, although 470 would be a lovely engine to include in this thing, because that's up in Maine as well. No. Okay, we're thinking too far north here. Let's bring it back a little bit. So, then I spotted a railroad that I'd kind of looked at before, not necessarily as part of this brainstorming, but in just a general sense, because I had heard about them wanting to do a commuter service. This railroad was the Housatonic Railroad, or is the Housatonic Railroad. This railroad runs from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, where it interfaces with CSX and the Lakeshore Limited by extension, but doesn't actually run any passenger service right now. It used to host the Berkshire Scenic Railroad, which currently, or now, runs out of North Adams, Mass. I've taken a ride on that before. I recommend it if you're up there. It's a fairly short trip, but they've got a working RDC, so that's something special. And so, I said, okay, the Housatonic might do it, but what do we do with that? And I sort of continued thinking. I went, okay, so the Housatonic, are they in a built-up enough area to warrant a rail trail? Maybe not built up, but they are in an extraordinarily scenic area, and they have very few carloads. They don't do a whole lot of traffic. Their primary move is from CSX down towards New York City, and to be honest, CSX already does that. So, it doesn't help them a whole lot. In fact, I'm kind of surprised they're still in business, but that's a different topic. But they want to have a commuter service. Okay, they do. Interesting. Now, but what about steam engines? Are they near any museums? And the answer is yes. Their southernmost point, actually it might be their southernmost point, is in Danbury, Connecticut. And in Danbury is the Danbury Railroad Museum. And in the Danbury Railway Museum, it is railway, not railroad. In the Danbury Railway Museum is the last surviving brother of a Lee. So, B&M 1455, which is of the same class as our favorite Italian mogul, which is 1360 from the Iron Horseman Chronicles, for those of you who don't know, is stored there. Not serviceable, not runnable, but there. And that was something that I was willing to stretch for the sake of the film. Make the engine serviceable. So, or operable. Or, in this case, what my brainstorm ended up coming out with was they just finished restoring it and they're very proud of it. So, we have this, this railway in a great position, really, for the plot. We have a steam engine in a great position for the plot. And we have, we have existing motive in real life. It's just real enough to, possibly happen. Not quite, because you'd still have the problem with the steam engine, but it's just real enough. And I wanted to create something that was realistic enough. So, back to brainstorming. What are we going to do? And this is where it sort of fell by the wayside for a bit. I knew that I wanted to have trail people come in, want to shut down the railroad, varying degrees of success. Maybe they've got some towns along the route that are on their side. Maybe they've got some towns along the route that aren't. And they sort of need a unanimous agreement to kick the railroad out, because why would you build half of a trail? Or a trail with a giant chunk missing? So, I sort of shelved the project for a while. I didn't write too much for a little while. I'd worked on some Iron Horseman stuff, but that was really about it. Until recently, where I decided to pick it up again, because I started to have some better ideas. Not necessarily better than what I'd already had, but more ideas then. Started to have some ideas. And so I pictured these two. Almost like a buddy cop scenario. You've got the older guy and you've got the younger guy, which they really aren't that far apart. The older guy is in his 40s, the younger guy is in his 30s, and they work on the railroad. They are the engineer and conductor for the railroad. Now, this is a very small railroad. It only has one of each. And it has an owner, and probably a shop guy, which I haven't gotten to that yet, but that's about it. So I had this relatively small cast of characters from the railroad point of view, and I started fleshing out their relationship, and that's when I just sort of started writing again. And I usually write from tip to tail. I start at the beginning and I work towards it. I work through it until the end. If I don't like it, I go back and I write it again. Or I pull parts out and rearrange them or stuff like that, but I usually write from tip to tail. Now, the thing that really got me writing is the fact that I could do that. I had a good opening, finally. I had a good beginning scene in mind. And it's this very scenic, it opens to scenes of the area, which it is a very scenic area. It's in the Berkshires. So Pittsfield is very nice, but you have scenes of the Housatonic River, of wildlife, of people walking around, like in the town of New Milford, which is a very nice, not backwoods town, just sort of touristy looking town. And I've never been there, but, whatever. Danbury, I don't think is as nice. It's a little bit more rough. But either way. Shots of this. And the opening scene takes place in New Milford, so the shots of New Milford in particular are appropriate. This is New Milford, Connecticut, for those following along at home. You can see the whole railroad on the open railway map, by the way, if you're interested in looking at this place. and on Google Maps. It's not like it's hidden by any stretch. It has some really janky curves in it. Just throw that out there. It's a interestingly engineered railroad. But, opens on just shots of the wildlife, shots of the track, shots of the river, shots of the area around, without a train yet, and without really a person that it's focusing on. And this is when you'd get, the opening credits, you'd get the studio headers, or whatever. And not the title card yet, we're getting there. And then, boom, cut to focus on the side of a Jeep, like GP locomotive, and it's focused around the word Housatonic, which is written on the side of the engine because it's the Housatonic Railroad. And above it says, blah, 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 presents, and then cut to Housatonic, or the Housatonic. And that's when you finally have the engine noise kick in, right at that moment. So it's, very peaceful and quiet until you're looking at the title. Which I think is a very cool visual and audio, stuck together. And that's sort of what I had, and it was like, okay, well, we've got this scene. I've got to write this down, and then where do I go from here? And so it looks at that, and then it cuts to in the cab where you've got the buddy cops sitting next to one another. The conductor, they're sort of trundling along at, 30 miles an hour tops. This is not a fast railroad. The conductor is reading the paper, and the engineer is just sort of, sitting there. He's driving. Conductor's reading the paper, turns a page, turns to an article entitled, "A Commuter Rail Comeback in Hartford," which those of you who listen to the podcast or watch the podcast should know that we talked about on the most recent podcast. There is a rail line, or maybe it was the one before that. Uh-oh, my mouse is dying. There's a rail line that just started running in Hartford, Connecticut, called the Hartford Line. And it's not just in Hartford. It runs all over the place, all up the central Connecticut area. Sorry, I had to get a battery. So from New Haven all the way up to Springfield, Massachusetts. And it's a big deal because it's a brand new commuter service. How cool is that? And the Housatonic could take their lead in real life. So, that's a government-funded project. That's one of the issues with it. That's a government-funded project. So, that's not necessarily an issue with it, but I'm saying that for the sake of the Housatonic, it is. Because the Housatonic is a private company. So, why is this doing this to me? I don't know why my mouse is kind of freaking out on me. Are you still... No. So... Crap, where was I? Oh yeah, we cut to the inside, and the older guy, the conductor, he starts talking about, we'll get a load of this article. Commuter rail comeback in Hartford. How cool is that? I bet these government jobs are pretty cushy. I bet they have good benefits, these commuter rail jobs. And the other guy, the engineer's name is Clayton. He's a black guy. He grew up in Adams, Mass, so right around the corner from Pittsfield. And the white guy, or the conductor is the white guy in this case. So we've got one of each. Good job. Good job, me. I'm being diverse. I don't know why. I didn't consciously do it. It's just sort of the way the character popped into my head. I'm not, going out of my way to be diverse. Which also, as you go along, the cast is sort of a sausage fest. And then I am. That's when you go back and you go, maybe I can break this up a little bit. But, anyway. So, Clayton is the engineer. And he's the younger guy, he's in his 30s. And he says, well, I wouldn't abandon the Housatonic just yet, because he's tied to the area. The other guy, Samuel, is from Foccia, Georgia, or Foccia, F-O-C-C-I-A, Georgia. And so he's got a kind of an accent. And he just sort of moved there for the sake of the job. I don't know why he went so far for that job, but, maybe his family or, Maybe his wife was from the area or something like that, Something. I can work on that more later, but he's in the area. It's just, again, it isn't something I consciously decided, it's just sort of the way these characters came out. And more traits will sort of be dictated as the script moves along, and, people will probably change a little bit, not only throughout the course of the script, but throughout the course of the script writing. There may be some emergent traits with the way I have to write this thing. So, we have these two guys, they talk a little bit about this, and then they get into busting each other's chops about, it's... I don't remember how they get there exactly, but they're busting each other's chops, and that's how the reveal comes with where they're from, because Samuel says, you grew up in the boonies, you didn't have anything, your public transportation was a Greyhound bus, and Clayton fires back, because Foggia, Georgia is metropolitan, and he says it is more than Adams, Mass. At least we had Amtrak, or at least we have Amtrak, and that's true. I did do that minor research. So, sort of in the opening scene, I'm establishing the backstories a little bit of the characters, and we'll see more as it goes. And I'm also trying to set up some, in-jokes that are going to be referenced later. I'm trying to do a lot of Chekhov's gun. The commuter rail is one. The commuter rail is the biggest one, because that's kind of what the movie revolves around. The other one is the fact that Clayton's truck is always broken down. And to the point where he lives in Adams, but he usually stays with Samuel in Pittsfield, and Samuel's family in Pittsfield, because he can't get home. Now, it's fine, because he's a bachelor. It's not like he has anybody to tend to, or even a dog or anything, up in his apartment in Adams, but that's just the way it is. He is stricken, he's stranded in Pittsfield most of the time. So, okay, where are we? We need to get up here. I'm thinking I made this a little too far away. It doesn't really matter. It's only a couple more tiles either way. And Samuel says to him, tongue-in-cheek, Samuel says to him, you spent so many nights in my house this past month. Something on the order of you either need a better car or a horse. And Clayton laughs it off, and he says, oh, come on, Sam, you can't be serious. And Sam says, I know, I'm not serious, don't worry. And I thought I told you not to call me Sam, which, that's just sort of a quiet homage to Airplane, because I felt like I could throw that line in there. But come on, I need to make this work. Sorry, I'm thinking all of a sudden. How weird, right? And so the horse is another one. The horse is a setup, because later there will be a horse involved. And the engineer's son, and I'm sort of putting this all out there because I wrote some of it down, but I'm trying to brainstorm it. The engineer's son is currently involved with, the son is 15, by the way, but he is dating a girl whose parents own a couple of horses, and she lives down in New Milford. So a lot of the story takes place there, or at least the opener of it does. And a few things will later, because that's sort of where everything's based. That's where the trail people are based, it's where the horse family is based, and it's really where the fighting ground will be, although the engine, of course, is going to come from Danbury. So, Yeah, we've got that. We need to get the rails a little bit farther. Crap. I'm drawing a blank again. I'm doing it again. I'm not thinking. I'm not talking. That's bad, because we don't have the music. And so they talk about that, and then, and I think he says, I just wanted to get your attention. And he says attention, and he looks over from Samuel, because he's looking at him. And he looks over, and there's protesters blocking the track. Which is exactly what you want to see. So they stop the train, which, again, they weren't moving very fast. There was never a danger of running anybody over. But they stopped the train at a crossing in New Milford, and there are a ton of people blocking the crossing. And I mean, several dozen people at least. And, there's a woman out front with a megaphone, and she's saying, we're the Housatonic Rail Trail Commission. Your days are numbered, Housatonic Railroad. We wanted to give you this warning so you could get better jobs, or, take your job somewhere else, and, because we're going to shut down your dangerous, polluting, I threw in a bunch of adjectives there. Dangerous, polluting, outdated mode of transportation, and replace it with something clean, and something that will unite these communities, and yada yada. The normal shtick. Nothing really out of the ordinary there. Just the normal rhetoric. And I was honestly tempted to look up a couple of, sort of rail trail bills to get a feel for what's been, for what usually comes out and what the wording usually is. But I feel like we've seen enough on the podcast, and I've gleaned enough from them that I sort of already know what to expect. So, this woman, whose name is Abigail Mission, which I chose the last name for a reason, because she's a woman on a mission, she is the head of the commission, and she is the one that does most of the legwork, including, getting the permits, talking to townspeople, talking to town councilmen, doing campaigns, setting up protests like this, that sort of thing. She does that stuff, and so she is, again, she's the head, she's the important one, and so we're going to see a lot of her throughout the plot, and she's probably going to be, for most of the rail folks in the audience, fairly unlikable. I mean, she's designed to be fairly unlikable anyway, and I feel like I'm going to try and tailor her character to be more of more of someone that more people can dislike at the beginning of the movie, especially, because obviously there are plenty of people who want to see more rail trails, and that's evidenced by the fact that they seem to crop up all the time. And, no matter what your argument may be, you don't want to be writing a movie and be on, I hesitate to call it the wrong side of history, but you don't want to make a movie that pisses a lot of the audience off. So, if you're going to release this movie, A, you're going to need a happy ending, so where everyone gets to live in harmony. And B, you're going to want to have your unlikable characters be unlikable, period, for whatever reasons you decide, and not potentially likable to, to a sect of the audience where then they will align themselves with their motives and then to be frustrated by the end of the movie when those things don't come true. That said, if the ultimate goal here, which the happiest ending, as I'm sure we all know, is for there to be a rails with trails set up so that you have the bike path set up alongside the railroad and blah, 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 that sort of thing, as we've harped on about on the podcast, I'm sure, about 1,000 times, then that means it's okay if you're going to make the people in the audience sort of align with her motives anyway, which, again, I'm saying a lot of this out loud because it's really a lot of brainstorming in progress. And at the end, that's probably what you're going to want to happen. It's what I'm going to want to happen, is to have a happy ending where everyone gets what they want, basically. The Housatonic Railroad people get to keep their jobs, the Housatonic Railroad gets to have its commuter service, the communities get to have their bike path and their commuter service, so they basically get to have their cake and eat it too. And the railroad inspector gets to see that the funds are being used appropriately, and the guy gets the girl. I don't know. So I was talking about this to my dad, and I mentioned the fact that if I was ever going to get it past the folks in Hollywood, it would have to be, and I know that's a high bar. That's mostly a joke. There would have to be some sort of love story woven into the background. And I went, oh, great, yeah, of course, I do need that. So naturally, the love story is going to be with the son, who's 15, like I said, and this girl, that's his. So the love story is also going to be sort of a redemption for her, because she's going to sort of be working for Abigail Mission, again, head of the rail trail people, as a spy. Not really as a spy, because she doesn't dislike the kid, whose name is Michael. But, sort of like, she's feeding her information. She's the reason that... Oh, okay, I didn't even get to that part in the script. She's the reason that the protest was held, or when it was, and where it was. So Abigail doesn't know a whole lot about railroads. Abigail sort of only just knows what she's heard and what she's seen, which is not a whole lot. And she just generally doesn't like them because she's been taught to not like them. And she also likes to ride her bike. So, she isn't really doing this for the sake of the bike path necessarily. She isn't really doing it for the fact that she wants a bike path, because she doesn't necessarily. She's really doing it because she thinks it'll put her in a favorable position, and it'll sort of boost her a little bit. It'll give her a little bit more notoriety if she can get this thing done. She just wants that notoriety because she wants to be like a politician or something, and she wants to have that done. So the thing that it comes down to is she doesn't actually really dislike the railroads. She's just been taught to, and she's taken on a certain rhetoric in order to make her base happy. Does that sound familiar to anybody? There are plenty of people in that base who really don't like the railroad, and that will become readily apparent as the movie goes on. But it stands to reason that most people in general are fairly moderate, and she's one of them. She just wants the notoriety. She wants to be able to become a decent politician someday, and in order to do that, people have to know your name. So she figures that tackling this community project is something that she can do, that should be fairly easy, and by this point in the timeline, she's already making fairly good headway. So she organizes this protest sort of as a show of force to let the railroad know that, hey, we're coming, and we're not going to back down. You guys are going out of business. We're going to take you down. We've already got the towns on our side. They just probably haven't told you yet, because it's kind of tough to break the news that, hey, we're dropping support of you. You're going to have to get out of town. And this is a railroad that is supported by the towns it runs through, because, again, it doesn't really have a whole lot of run-through traffic, because it parallels CSX, more or less. There are more difficult... there are easier and more difficult ways to go, and the Housatonic is really kind of a mess when it comes to... What's the phrase? Easiest way between 2 points is a straight line. The Housatonic is not. Not even a little. So, the Housatonic definitely has problems with being competitive. And so they stop at that crossing, and she's yelling at them through her megaphone, and Samuel just sort of says, screw this, and gets out with a high-vis vest on and a flag and a stop sign, and he flags the crossing. And by flags the crossing, I mean he parts the protesters like Moses parting the Red Sea, and he just sort of waves the engine to come and follow him very closely. And Clayton slips into Notch 1 and just sort of very slowly creeps across the street. Meanwhile, Abigail's still standing in the middle of the tracks. Everyone else has moved, but Abigail's standing there, puts down her megaphone, waves to people to come back and stand on the tracks with her. Meanwhile, Samuel's trying to reason with her, saying, yeah, you're going to stop the train, I'm sure, because he's fairly, maybe not pessimistic, but he's jaded. He's seen this happen before, and he sort of figures that, once it's at this point, it's an inevitability, and there's no way that they're going to be able to keep their jobs. So he says to Abigail, you probably will stop the train, but you're not going to stop the train today. And you probably should get out of the way. And so he's sort of wordlessly, after that, she's like, oh, you wouldn't dare hit me with a train. And he just looks at her, looks up at Clayton in the cab, and steps out of the way. And she looks at him and looks at the approaching train, and, sort of frustratedly then steps out of the way, when there was not too much time. But she had put her megaphone down in order to wave to everyone that was around her, and the train runs it over. So, a small victory for the guys of the Housatonic Railroad, because they got Abigail to shut up, but ultimately not really a blow to Abigail's campaign. And the thing is, as Samuel is smiling at her, boarding the locomotive again, smiling at her like an idiot, and she's frustratedly standing off to the side, he spots his son standing in the back of the crowd. And his smile just disappears. Boom, gone. And it's, because you've got to wonder, he's wondering, what is my kid doing at this protest that's basically threatening my job? And effectively, his livelihood, because he's 15, he lives at his parents' house, obviously. It's not like he, got his own job and a car and whatever. Also, he doesn't have a car. Obviously, he's 15. He doesn't have a license yet. Shouldn't be driving. Yet, here he is in New Milford when he lives in Pittsfield. How interesting. So they get back in the cab and continue, and they sort of, decide, well, we gotta talk to Jack, which is the boss, head of the railroad company, about this. And also Samuel tries to call his son, which it doesn't go through. And the cheeky thing is, at least from for the script point of view, the visuals and the audience and the actual movie point of view, not just what's going on in universe, Samuel tries to call his son as soon as he boards the engine again after noticing that he's standing in the crowd there. And it cuts to, Samuel doesn't say this. It's never explicitly stated by one of the characters that he's his son, at least not yet. But you see Samuel pick up the phone and ring, and then you cut to Michael, Samuel's son, hiding behind like a tree or a bush or something, watching the train, head away. And he's, takes his phone out of his pocket because it starts ringing. It says Dad on it, and he just hangs up, puts it away, and sort of starts running. So, and that's where I stopped writing. So I got the first scene done, and I was gonna show it to people and say, hey, what do you think? But I've had so many good ideas that I might just get back to writing without even really asking, because the thing that I was stuck on was, okay, where do I go now? Do I go to a rail trail people meeting? Do I go to the meeting between Samuel, Clayton, and Jack, their boss, about the rail trail? Do I cut to something to do with Michael and, his girlfriend that hasn't been introduced yet and maybe introduced slightly later? Do I cut to just Michael? What do I do? What do I do? Do I cut to the dinner table where he's explaining this to his dad later? And I decided, as I was in the shower, because all good ideas come to you in the shower, I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut to the depot. And this is the depot in Pittsfield, which I'm not sure there is one in real life, and I don't think that's where the Housatonic Railroad is actually based. But for the sake of this movie, that is where it's based. And so they're based there. And the railroad is, fairly small. Again, a very small operation. Now, the boss, however, I'm not sure where he comes from exactly. He's probably a Bostonian. Probably comes from a fairly wealthy family because he's always fairly dressed up. Or he's in the mob. I wouldn't necessarily state that outright, but I tossed around the idea very briefly of him being carted away by police at some point in the movie, like towards the end, leaving everyone else to fend for themselves. Which I might do just sort of as an amusing touch, if I think it works. I don't necessarily think it's necessary. Again, it might just be for laughs. Yay, getting carted off to jail for laughs. Lol. Put the handcuffs on me. Am I being detained? Lol. But, that's sort of where my thought process is. So we're going to cut to the depot, which is going to be later in the evening. So the crew is returned from their run down to Danbury and beyond, back to Pittsfield. They walk in. Jack sees them. Oh, hey, I'm glad to see you guys. Well, yeah, we're glad to see you too. We asked you to stay after 5 o'clock so we could talk to you. Oh, yeah, you did. That's right. Oh, what, you didn't stay for that? Oh, no, I stayed because I have to talk to you about your kid, Samuel. Oh, yeah? Yeah, I think there's something going on with him. Yeah, well, there definitely is because, well, I've got good news and bad news regarding your kid. Yeah, what's that? Well, the bad news is he was in jail. The good news is I got him out of jail. Again, this is the guy that always has connections, which is why I was thinking about mob activity. He's like, oh, yeah? And conversation sort of goes from there. And so that's briefly mentioned. He's like, yeah, he should be on his way up here now. He's escorted by an officer, whatever. Yeah, where was he? New Milford. Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, how'd you know? I saw him in this crowd of protesters. Crowd of protesters? Yeah, so this rail trail people, blah, 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 blah. And so that conversation goes on. And then Samuel finally asks, well, I don't know. Why... The thing that I'm wondering is, why would you hold a protest on a Tuesday at noon? And Clayton sort of goes, well, maybe because that's the only time we ran through Milford during the day this week. And Samuel goes, well, yeah, but how would they know that? And well, there has to be somebody on the inside. Somebody's got to be feeding them information. And so they sort of look around, and then the door swings open and Michael walks in. And everybody looks at him. And there's a moment of tension, and he goes, what? Oh, yeah. Hi, Dad. It's like, you're in trouble, blah, blah, blah. So it turns out it isn't him. Maybe they suspect it for a while, maybe they don't. Maybe he has to prove his innocence by reporting to them what they're doing. And the real kicker is, in order to get to New Milford, he drove, of course. He drove Clayton's truck, which had just been fixed. He doesn't know how to drive a stick. Clayton's truck is stick. He burns out the clutch in Clayton's truck, shortly after getting pulled over for speeding because he was trying to rush home because his dad saw him protesting, or at least being present at the protest. And he gets pulled over. He would get fined for speeding, but cop realizes he's driving without a license, has him come in, calls his parents, calls his mother, I guess, in this case. Mother calls up Jack because she knows that Jack can pull some strings. Jack gets kid out of jail. Kid comes back with the pretty burned out clutch and pretty much ruins it the rest of the way. So they finally go to leave at the end of the night. And Clayton gets in his truck to leave, which of course he's surprised that it's there. And he can't leave because the clutch is totally ruined. So, yeah. Then he has to stay the night with Samuel and his family again. So, that's how we get the dinner time scene, which is, might be overlapped with the stuff that goes on. But anyway, Jack says that he's going to sort of pull some strings, see what he can do, and figure out what's going on behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Michael's going to come at it from the other angle, where he's going to be working on the inside and feeding information back. And not doing any, espionage stuff, but just feeding information. And they're going to see if it corroborates with what Jack finds. And so, that's really where I'm at. It's sort of like, okay, well now they just need to stall and kill time. I'm probably going to develop the relationship between people a little bit more. Maybe develop the relationship between Abigail and the girl, and maybe Abigail and Michael and the girl, and sort of that in general, and Jack with a number of people. The other thing is, a couple of days go by, perhaps. Jack's on the phone, they come in to talk to him. It's like, oh, Jack, you're still here. He's like, yeah, so I've been talking about getting a commuter rail service running, blah, blah, blah. Or, maybe they knew this already, but he's talking to people at the Danbury Railway Museum. Again, he's friends with the president, of course he is. And they are ecstatic that they just finished the restoration of their B&M Mogul. How beautiful, how wonderful. They just finished the restoration of their engine. And they're going to be using it very soon on some excursion trains. They want to know if they can use a line for it. Whatever. And, they wanted to talk to me about using the line for excursion trains. And I said, well, we might be able to do that if you can lend us some help. Could you get us some passenger cars to use for this commuter service? And they're like, oh, certainly, sure, we could do that, no problem. And then meanwhile, they don't get to run the excursions right away because they, the significant passenger equipment is away, being used, but also because their Alco breaks down and they don't have the manpower to do two things at once because it's a volunteer operation. They have to fix the Alco. Meanwhile, they're running with a switcher which can't really get up to speed, but it's okay. It's just the yard tours. And they have their steam engine, which they're kind of afraid to play with. Again, the steam engine in this case is totally certified. Everything's good on it. There's nothing wrong with it. And so... Oh, crap. Where was I? I don't know. It's that might be as far as I know. Maybe I'll think of more things later. If there's any tangents if there's any ideas that you guys have, feel free to post them down below because I may include them because I need some ideas. Basically, I may sound like I have plenty of ideas, but I don't have enough ideas to turn it into a full-length script yet. There's a lot of ideas, just not quite enough. And so yeah, in thinking about this, in hearing me talk about this, if you guys have any recommendations, let me know. Oh, well, the other thing is, of course, so in this universe, and I'm not sure about how much equipment they have in real life, but in this universe, the Housatonic has one functioning Jeep that they use for just about everything. And that Jeep is the one they end up using for their commuter trains. And, because they really don't run freight that often, they can probably get away with running a longer train on the weekend and running the commuter trains during the day, or at least running the commuter trains on peak and then running the freight trains off peak with the same engine. So you're working this engine a lot, but you have enough time in the schedule to do everything if you're running the railroad fairly rigorously, and the crew doesn't mind because A, they're doing something a little bit different, and B, they're getting paid. That's more hours on the job. They're getting paid. And the railroad is good because they're making money off of it, surprisingly enough. But in order to get the ability to do that, and I think in order to get the coaches, so I mentioned about the Danbury Museum with the coaches, but I don't think that's going to be the case because I don't think they have the equipment for that. First of all, and second of all, I need to tie the government in somehow. So, the Danbury Railroad Museum has... They would have to get permission from MassDOT or ConDOT or something like that in order to use some coaches that had been set aside for commuter service, whether these be MBTA, like Keolis coaches, or which are, I think, Bombardier coaches, or some whatchamacallit, I don't know, whatever ConDOT uses for their coaches, that sort of thing. They have to get coaches. They have to transport passengers somehow. And so they have to get either, permission to use these coaches or funds to purchase or rent or lease coaches. And so that's really where the government comes in because they get permission to use them and they get funds to use them either federally or from the state or from the states plural. And, that's a big deal. And that's why, so 30 days later, after you start running the service, the inspector's going to come and check whether you've been running the service or if you just used the money and the coaches have been sitting fallow. Also, like grants for track work and stuff like that I'm certain they would have had to apply for in order to get trains moving at a decent speed. So, there's a lot of federal or state or government money just in general that went into this project or that would go into a project like this. And again, so there's somebody on hand that's keeping track of that. And that it's their job to make sure that the money is spent properly. And so they're going to come by and they're going to check on the railroad. Now, the trail people know this. And so they realize that they have to somehow sabotage the running of the railroad. Now, Abigail, again, doesn't really, she wants to succeed, but she doesn't really have a super high stake in this. And so she's probably thinking, at this point in the story, she's really just thinking that, okay, well, maybe they'll screw it up and we'll just move forward with plans. There are people in the rail trail group, though, that are very much more adamant about having this thing work. And so they will go to some means to do it. Eventually, it ends with them derailing the train as it's heading back to storage. And this not irreparably, but it damages the Jeep, the one engine. And any engines in storage are being worked on. They don't have the money to repair it right away. And, even if they did, they don't have the time to repair it right away because the inspector's coming, the next day. Or something like that, So, or 2 days, or whatever. Not enough time to fix the Jeep. So they can't borrow a diesel because the Alco is down and the other two are shunters, which wouldn't do the trick. They would probably fail if they can't make that, if they can't make the time that they're scheduled for. They would fail inspection because it's well, clearly you're phoning it in. You made up a schedule and you haven't been following it. And so they realized that the only thing that they could do on such short notice and without, calling in, it's at this point Jack has reached his limit of favors or something to that effect. They have to steal the mogul out of the museum. And there are a couple of people that will help them. The museum president is not one of them. There are a couple of people that will help them, including a guy who I've labeled just as the old-timer, who's the only one among them that actually knows how to operate a steam engine because nobody in the group is over 45 and has ever set their hands on the steam engine before. So, so that's that. I'm sure you guys can understand. You go, if you ever, you walk into a steam locomotive cab for the first time without seeing what's going on, or without knowing what the levers are, and you're just totally overwhelmed. It's very, very different than a push-start diesel where you just put it in notch 1 and go. So they step into that cab and they're just befuddled. They're just totally bewildered and lost, and they can't do anything. And the old-timer is there, who's the security guard, and he's been following the progress, and he's sympathetic, and he helps them. And there's going to be more to it than that, of course. But that's sort of where I'm at right now. And so he helps them. They get the engine running. They pass with flying colors. Or at least they pass. And they all live happily ever after. And they get their rails with trails, so Abigail ends up being happy. Now, the important thing is that Abigail isn't just there for the trail. Isn't there for the trail. She's there for other reasons. And so, whether they get the trail or not, in the end, is not the biggest deal to her, as long as she still gets the notoriety she wants for being a part of the negotiations. And so, when people start doing crazy things in the name of getting the trail, she is basically out. She's done. She doesn't want that to happen. She doesn't need her name slandered because somebody almost got killed when the people that she was organizing literally derailed a train. Oh no, Tane, please don't do this. Okay, thank you. And so, she starts to sort of divorce herself from them, but she can't leave them because that's her project. She would be, a deserter. She could, not necessarily get in trouble, but she would lose her credibility for backing out on her project. And obviously she doesn't want that. So, that's what it comes down to. She doesn't want to have that happen, so she sticks with it, even though it doesn't feel right, even though there's stuff that's going on, and she tries to reform the group, and, she has this regret, and she has this revelation that it's like, this isn't what I wanted to happen. This isn't what I wanted to come out from this. I wanted to come out with a trail. I wanted to see the betterment of the community, and I wanted to see, people sort of working together for this, not working against one another for it. And, again, that sort of breaks her. And I'm not totally sure what all else needs to happen. It's still very amorphous in my head, but the thing is that it's the kind of thing where I think it can go somewhere. I think it can go places. I don't think it's a bad concept. It needs a lot of refinement, and I don't want to totally, I am taking from Titfield Thunderbolt. I don't want to just be ripping them off, which is fine, and I think, or which should be easy enough because I haven't seen it, so I can't exactly do that. I can't exactly rip them off. It's hard to copy somebody if you've never seen what they're doing. So, yeah. And I don't know, again, the characters, stuff like that, within Titfield Thunderbolt, how they act, how they're portrayed, what the different people are, why people even dislike the train in that movie. Again, I'm trying to do everything, I guess what you might call sort of homebrew, where I'm coming up with the stuff on my own. And having not seen the movie, I feel like it's, feel like it's better that I've not seen the movie. So, how far are we going? Okay, so, at least to here? Where's the tile line? Right there. To here. I'll just mark it. And we are in the route layer. I set that up at the very beginning. I don't know. I need to get to the comments again. We only have a couple of them, but they are at least one of them is decent. Actually, both of them are decent because both of them give me things to talk about. One of them is close to home. The other one is quite far from home. Well, maybe not quite far. I'm a New Englander, so most things are quite far, and a Rhode Islander to boot. But you'll get what I mean when I get there. Now, I need to raise this. How's that? That is a bit of an incline. Can I make that level? What does that look like? That is a very low embankment. That's fine by me. Oh, are these things fine with no. Darn. Alright, that's better. And it's better for this too. Okay, so I need to build a bridge here of some description. And that will probably be one embankment, and the other one will probably be like here. And we can have a single span. That's kind of long for a single span. How about like here? Yeah. Can I do like ROTK for this? I might be able to. Or maybe I can get away with a No, because it's not high enough for a, I was holding shift. Oh, you know what? I could use another pin-connected truss. That might do it. Let's grab one of those. Pin-connected truss bridge. Plate girder bendy. Actually, I could probably get away with this because it's short. How about an abutment? Let's get ourselves an abutment. Now, if anybody is wondering, so I put that that download in. But in the most recent thingy-mahoozit. What am I saying? In one of the more recent zombie trains, I added a download for the most recent version of Tollbrand. And one of the things that got pointed out immediately was the fact that, hey, there's a missing asset in here. And I went, what? Oh, crap. Because there was. And that missing asset was a switch lever that I put down an invisible switch lever, and I didn't really think about it, and I didn't check, and I couldn't use it. So I went and I fixed that, for those wondering, and I put a new download. So it's in the same spot, but it's just a new download. And I think this is fine, actually. Is this too long for a girder bridge? It is kind of long. That's fine. I mean, I can move this end closer anyway. How's that? That's better for a girder bridge. Let me do something real quick, though. Oh. Clear that. Get rid of that. Straighten this. Add a spline point right here. No! Oh, that sucks. That's not what I wanted to happen at all. Okay, wait. I need to advance that, and then I need to add a spline point right here. Okay. And then I need to raise that to this, because the bridge was too sloped. Too much slope. Okay, so let's do that. Yeah, and that looks fine. So we just have a girder bridge now instead of a truss bridge, which I think is better in this case. Which also, I'm going to move this to there, and then I'm going to slide this back to there. Make sure that this isn't sticking out on this side. Alright. Looking better and better. Getting better and better. Let's see. Our end line is over there. So we've got to keep going. Now, we've sort of gotten higher than we need to, I think. Which means that we really have got to start coming down. This, however, this is fine. Is it fine? Let's see. Looks good to me. Holy cow. Did I turn this into 5-meter grid or did I not? Doesn't look like I did. Let's do that. There. And there. That looks better. Marginally. Okay. This is 5 meter grid. Okay. Cannot wait to run a train down this. How awesome this is. This is just single track for its whole length. It really does follow the contours of the river, and I didn't even intend for that to happen. Now I'm just looking at other places. We got 2 mountain-born lakes, and we're going to be building many more. This is slanted, isn't it? That's fine. Cars are just going to roll off the end. Here's our highway that I've actually grown to not dislike that much. Okay. Well, we've got to kind of continue with this, don't we? We're about to get into thingy here. We're about to get into the town itself. I don't know, I think I'm done with terrain for today. I'm going to go copy paste some trees. So, or do some grass work or something. You know, around here, I need to get a move on with this stuff, including... Actually, no, you know what? We're gonna fill in that one little gap that we haven't filled in yet, which is over here. So then we'll have a lot of terrain done in areas where, or a lot of not terrain, whatever you call it, texture done in these areas. So that's my thoughts for the Housatonic. Again, tell me what you think. Anybody, everybody, somebody. I say that I'm so desperate. I'm not. I mean, I don't care if you don't care. If you're not here to hear me talk about my movie ideas, I totally understand, because that's not what the show is about. But, I would appreciate the feedback if you guys have any ideas, if you guys have any thoughts. And if you guys think I'm doing too much of this or not enough of that, or, whatever, I would appreciate it. But either way, I'm going to continue working on the script. We'll see if I get farther. Again, I've thrown some ideas in there, in that document, which is mostly what I've outlined to you. I want to have that happily ever after. I want to have the character redemptions that I want. I want to have the love story because Hollywood demands it. And I assure you, I will do my best to not make it real shoehorny. I'll do my best to make it, sort of fit. At least give the people, the thing I said was, I don't want to add a girl into the story for the simple sake of there being a love story. And that's absolutely true. I feel like that is something that happens way too often. It's, oh, here's the female character so that the male character can have somebody to, bang at the end of the movie. That's not what this is about. It's about having some sort of love and heroics. And if I can't do that, then I'm not going to do that. It's I will try, and if it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, I can probably if it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, which means she is not important enough, that means I can easily write her out of the script. So there's two sides to everything. It's some things are easier, some things are harder, some things are just plain easy. And that's, I can make it fairly easy for myself, actually. I'm going to cover over the river with the trees, because I'm just going to delete the trees that I need to get out of the way. And it honestly doesn't matter if I don't go overboard with the texturing out here. Just filling in the gap is enough for me. So, let's delete some trees. Okay, and I want this. So we're going to clear a nice wide area around the trees, and then we're going to do up the textures all nice. Let me look at these comments. I got 2 of them. Zombie Slayer 234 or Zomb1E Slayer 234 says, Ellis, are you going to Railfest 2018 at Steamtown? The answer is yes. I wish you'd asked that like a week and a half ago or something.
so that I could have said, yes, I'll meet you there. If you were going. Zombie Slayer, tell me if you went. Tell me if you went and tell me what you thought. I'll tell you what I thought, because I'll be able to talk about it on the podcast this weekend anyway. But, I love Railfest. I mean, Steamtown has such a special place in my heart. It may not be the best facility, it may have its issues, and they may be pretty significant at times, but I really do love Steamtown. They captured my heart at a very young age. They have a collection like nobody else does, at least not in the U.S., where it's diverse. And yeah, a lot of it may be Canadian stuff, but it's a lot of different kinds of stuff, including effectively one-of-a-kind pieces in the United States. The Jubilee, for example, the Baltic Tank, for example. These are engines that you don't see otherwise. They've got the Shay that's sinking into the ground. They've got Blount and Chris. They've got a whole host of F units. They've got the Trolley Museum as well, which has all sorts of special stuff in it. And they have some of the more scenic and interesting train rides that you can get. And it's not just the scenic and interesting part, it's the long part. It is significant. It really is quite a ways that those excursions go sometimes. And that is one of the things that I would really love to do sometimes. I didn't get to do it this time around because I was volunteering. I was technically volunteering for the 250th of Anthracite Culture. And even though I didn't spend any time at that booth, I did get a little volunteer thing that let me wander around. And by me, I mean myself and Madison, because she came with me, and Chris, because he was there, because he does the 250th stuff. So, this, I don't know, it was special. I've never been to a rail fest. I've never been to too many giant railroad, foam events. But it was really, really cool. The fact that they had everything out, and Steamtown is always, is already always great about having stuff on display. Because they have, their whole yard is display. It's like a graveyard. It's disappointing. But the whole thing is just display everywhere, as far as the eye can see. And that is one of my favorite things about it, is that you can see the whole place. You can see more than the free entry fee should ever really give you at your own pace, and you can just wander the hell around. And nobody says a word to you most of the time. And I don't know, that's so cool. If you're gonna feel really sad though, maybe don't spend too much time out there in the yard and just look around the shops. In Railfest, everything was open. That's the big thing about Railfest. Everything's open, and you can wander around wherever you want. All the buildings, the shops, everything. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'm thinking about other things, but I'm thinking about Railfest in particular. I'm trying to sort out the stories in my head, sort out the stuff that all happened. Oh no, Tane, please don't. Okay. But, yeah, I had a blast. Again, going into Blount's cab, going up to everything, walking around the shop, seeing things. They had demonstrations. They had, they were not trimming. I'm not sure if they were trimming tires for real or if they were just doing a demonstration, because I was probably a demonstration, because the wheels for 3713 are at Strasbourg. But they were doing all sorts of demonstrations with their equipment, showing off all the cool stuff that they have, which is a lot of cool stuff for those who don't know. It is an amazing shop, even if they don't or can't use it to its full potential because of a shortage of manpower. They really, they know how to party. Now, they had a dining car that you could eat in, which was also really cool. Again, we walked around a lot. We took both the Scranton Limited, which is the train that was pulled by Anne, 26. They had a thing where you could name the engine, but it was only for ages 6 and under, and I didn't feel like pretending to be 6. But honestly, Chris and Madison and I should have just effing stacked that box with suggestions of the name Anne, because that's what she should be. Although if they name her something else, I'm not sure if we're going to change it in IHR canon. I kind of don't want to. But generally when an engine is already named, we go with that name. But since this came from an event, which is the Name the Engine event, maybe it doesn't make sense to have a Name the Engine event in the Iron Horseman universe. So, there, I figured it out. I got us a workaround. We're all good. I'm actually not going to do this grass all the way down. I'm just going to do it to, like, over here. Because we can't see a bridge from here. If you guys ever want me to come back and do it, make a comment about it. So, yeah. We also rode the little caboose ride that they had, which was behind an Alco, which not every day you get a chance to ride behind an Alco, at least not for me. So that was a bit of a novelty. I so wanted to bring Shelby. For those who don't know, that's the voice of Sam. I so wanted to bring her, but she was not available. I was disappointed. But yeah, Madison and I and Chris, we had a great time. We were going to go on one of the longer rides. Instead, we went on the trolley. Chris bought a shirt with himself on it, which that would be 2124. Because he's Chris. Nosam River was mentioned, of course it was. What else happened? I don't know. It was too much. It was a lot. Just being able to walk around was cool. Last time we were there, we didn't get to see Anne running. It was great to see her out and about. Although they don't really have the chance to work that engine because she's just tooling back and forth in the yard. But oh well. They talked about 3713. We got to watch some videos with their historical archives videos, which was really kind of interesting because we went in there and they had literally pictures of stairs. Literally, that's it. It was slideshows of pictures and blueprints of stairs from old railroad station schematics. A lot of the DL&W, but some of other railroads. And the backing song to this was Stairway to Heaven. And also, they did another one, which it was coal mines, and that was actually also really cool. And that, I don't remember the song to that, but it should have been 16 tons, and it wasn't. And then they did, oh God, what was the next one? They did one on bridges, and the song they played was Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. And then they did stations, and the song they played was Eye of the Tiger. Why? I have no idea. I have less idea than you could possibly believe that I have. I don't understand why Eye of the Tiger is the go-to song for showing off historical pictures of station buildings. And that's about when we left. Because there was somebody else in there and we didn't... we were the only 3 people in there for a while, and somebody else came in and I felt bad just riffing on the on the slideshow in front of them. So we all left. But we all left because we were bored as well. Wasn't a whole lot going on, just historical pictures. I probably could have stayed in there all day, if I'm gonna be honest. I probably could have stayed in there all day. Just the fact that they were showing off all the pictures, I'm not sure how common that is, but God, that's the coolest. It's so cool. I love this. I love historical imagery. And then we went to Johnny Rockets. We took the electric city trolley as well. Now that was also really cool. You go through a mile-long tunnel. I tried to hold my breath. I couldn't do it. You're in the tunnel for 2 minutes at least. And, meanwhile, I don't know. I don't know. They had some rains, so we couldn't go the whole distance, but we went almost the whole distance. We were very close. And then we went back to basically where the end point is to go to Johnny Rockets. I wish they could have dropped us off there. We would have gone and then caught the next trolley back. Although we took the last trolley of the day, so that's probably flawed, that manner of thinking. But either way, maybe we could have if we believed enough. Anyway, looking forward to 3713. Got to see it again. Got to see the new cab, which is mostly put together. There are still some bits and pieces that need to be redone. Or not redone, but finished, I guess is the right word. Because it's a new cab. They showed the new cab next to the old cab. They had them sitting next to Jefferson there in the shop. Yeah, I don't know. It was a great experience. And driving there and driving back was as always interesting. Took Route 6 for part of the way because why not? Why not take Route 6, the highway that goes from nowhere certain to nowhere else? And oh, good, we have this area done. All right, let's go down to Treadway. Let's see if we can do some stuff down here. And gosh, I don't know. I'm running out. I'm running out of things to talk about, but I could honestly gush on, my experience at Steamtown all day, because, it's hard to put into words the fact that it's so cool to be able to go into the shop other than those words right there. I could talk to you, just being able to wander around and being able to go in freely and not have this guided tour, which, don't get me wrong, love me some guided tours, but when you can go in there and just sort of look at whatever you want and just sort of linger and look into the drop pit and point to this and lean over that and, all that stuff, it is way cooler than having someone take you around and go, and this is this, and this is that. Not to say that it's bad to have that, because without that, nobody would know anything. But we went into Blount's cab 3 or 4 times. We kept coming back because we kept having ideas for pictures. A while ago, Shelby made me a scarf that says IHR on it, and I brought that with me, and I hung it over Blount's throttle, and we took a picture of it, and we sent it to her, and I don't know, it was so great. I love this. I love Steamtown. I like it more than Strasburg, because Steamtown has such a special place in my heart. Don't get me wrong, don't think it's better than Strasburg. Strasburg is, without a doubt, one of the most wealthy short lines in the nation, and they put out some high quality work from their shop, even if they are hoarding a certain RGS 20. But not going to name names here, Lynn. But yeah, that's so cool. I don't know. I'm losing it. You guys know that already. Whatever. So. Yeah. I did go to Railfest. Oh crap, I only have 20 minutes for... Oh, where's my phone? What was that? I only have 20 minutes for my next... question, which is just not really a question. Dean says, I've noticed that every day I watch Stargate, you and Madison are playing Fallout. Do you watch Stargate every day? Well, see, Madison, I wish she was here with me so she could talk about it. She could, come over here and say, my name's Madison Evans and I'm a Fallout addict. But she is. Way worse than I am, which is really saying something, because I have played a lot of that game. I really need to go on our accounts and look at the playtime. You can see your character playtime. I want to see if hers is higher than mine, because I started a hell of a lot earlier than she did. So if she has a higher playtime than me, something's wrong. And furthermore, I'm jealous, because she gets to hang out with Piper more than I do. So that means I need to play more. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cancel this series so that I can play Fallout more. On a serious note, yeah, she plays Fallout a lot when she's here. And if, Dean, I don't know what your Stargate watching schedule is, but if it's on the weekend, then yeah, she's going to be playing Fallout, because that's the days that she's here. And that's what she does when she's here. Oh, crap. And honestly, I can't blame her because Fallout is wicked fun. So deal with it, I guess, is what I'm saying. No, but I love to encourage her gaming tendencies. And because she doesn't normally bring her laptop over here, we can't, like, play Rocket League or something. So she's over there playing Fallout, and I'm over here playing Trains, and you are over there watching Stargate, I guess. So we're all doing good hobbies, which is good. For those who don't watch Stargate, get into it. It's a great hobby. There are 3 series and, like, 17 seasons in total, and 4 movies, I guess, if you count the pilot of Stargate Atlantis as a movie. So, watch it. It's a great show. Even Universe. And Universe is fairly panned sometimes. I think Universe is great in its own way. It's not what you're used to out of a Stargate show, but it is special. Now, I've gone on the Stargate rant before. I'm not going to go down that... I'm not going to walk down that path right now. I know. I won't. I've done it before. I'm sorry. So, watch Stargate. And that is all. But yes, no, she plays Fallout a lot. And I'm fine with it because it's like the best kind of bonding experience as a couple where you're each doing your own thing, but you're sitting in the same room, you're literally back to back, or not literally, but very close to, and you're both enjoying yourselves, and furthermore, you can sort of trade off. Now, I only play Fallout when she's here when she needs help killing something, because I am better at shooters than she is, and Fallout 4, I mean, it depends if you're playing with how heavily you're using VATS, but Fallout 4 has way better shooter mechanics. I guess this doesn't depend on if you're using VATS. It has way better shooter mechanics, way better gunplay than any of the other Fallout titles. At least in my opinion and from what I've heard. I played Fallout 3. The gunplay was not great. I played some of Fallout 3. My ex got me into it, and I played a little bit of it, but couldn't shoot for crap in that game. Fallout 4, different story, feels like a shooter, and that is great. It might not be for everyone because I can get that shooters aren't for everyone, but you still got VATS, and you can have a build that's pretty based around VATS, and you can have some guns that really do great in VATS, and the delivery is one, and God, I love that thing. It's because despite the fact that I am more experienced in shooters than she is, I'm still not a great shot. And so I do tend to fall back on VATS a lot. And also VATS is super useful because you get crits. It's kind of a toss-up as to whether VATS is more useful in a situation than just shooting at something, because sometimes your hit percentages in VATS can be a lot lower than the, your sort of chance of making the shot if you just pull out the weapon and go for it. But I don't know. That's generally the way we do. That's the way we do. I'm gonna shorten these roads. In fact, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make these gravel roads. So let's go get a gravel road. Let's see, I've got 40 minutes. So after we do Treadway Beach, I can finish filling out stuff up to here. And that'll get us a little bit farther. And then this is the next area that's really going to be like, oh, I've got to work on this. Now, this area, I'm not sure. So this is really rocky, So this might be a little bit bare of trees. Yeah, up here. So I might do some, sort of like a grassy edge down here. And then, because that's sort of like a tree line, although I might get rid of this grassy edge here. That's something to work on a little bit later when we get to here.
We still have to get over here. We still have to do the scenery up to here. I still need to get that gravel road. So, gravel road is up here by RJ Canyon. Boop, grabbing that. I need to make a little campground up there. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, where's Treadway? It's over here. Cruvis, what's that? It's a Stargate thing. Great, I'm doing it now. It's the end. It's the end. I'm doing Stargate things. I'm screwed. You guys are screwed. I'm just gonna start spouting references now. And that's basically the only conversation that Dean and I ever have. It's we just send each other back and forth like Stargate memes or Stargate pictures or that sort of thing. That's it. That's my entire friendship with him now, which is fine. Which is good because I'm glad I have somebody that I can share Stargate things with that isn't my dad. No offense to my dad, but I wanted more Stargate friends. So crap. Great. That's great. That's what I need. Here's what I'll do. For appearance's sake, this is what I'll do. I'm holding shift. I'm holding shift. Place the road. Oh, I was clicking on the, Here's what I'll do. So we're going to cover this very subtly. Attach to it. Put this over here. I'm not sure if this will ever really look right, but see, the thing is, these roads are really high off the ground for some reason. And the other thing I want to do is no vehicles. No. I don't feel like finding one of those. It's fine the way it is. It's okay if there are some vehicles that sort of weirdly disappear, because all of my vehicles do that. In real life, I mean. No, it's not called a tow company. I just don't believe in those no parking here signs. Okay, so now this is looking better. Now we need to get some beach. This is Treadway Beach, so let's get some more beach going on in here. The one thing is, I think I'm going to add a bit of a boggy area. So let's grab soil cracked. See, the thing is, I made the whole ocean floor this sand, so everything that's bordering an ocean has to be this sand, or else it doesn't really make a lot of sense unless we stick that there, unless we, smoosh whatever texture we're using deeper into the ocean. Oh, great, am I running out of space again? And I'm just going to lower this, and I'm probably going to put some foliage in it. No. What? No. Okay.
What if we got for foliage that can go in the water? Oh, you know what? Let me grab the reeds from the swamp. Where's the swamp? Take me to the swamp. Actually, maybe I don't want the reeds. Maybe I want this. Oh, whoops. I don't want the height. I want the actual spline. So, and there was another spline that I was using that maybe would also go well. Why am I using cracked sand for the underside of some water? Don't ask, because I am. Isn't that kind of the opposite of what belongs there? Shut up. I do what I want. On second thought, that looks hideous, and I don't know any place that would look like that, so let's get rid of it. I don't know any place that would look like that. So we'll put stuff over there in the little inlet. Yeah, back here. That's where we can put some swampy stuff. Some swampy, messy stuff. That other sand is great for if you're doing cracked ground, but I really wish that this would just work with me and 5-meter grid was not such a disaster. Because I can't properly spin textures if it's not updating with every tick. It's only updating with every, 10th tick. It can't be spun. Then you just have areas of texture that are all facing the same direction, and that's no good. So, unless I'm going to use a very small brush, which I might have to, I can't really spin the textures here. Or I can't really spin the textures anywhere unless I go back to the 10-meter grid in that spot. So let's look at this short green grass. That looks absolutely hideous. Let's look at some other grass. Actually, wait, we have some beach grass, don't we? We already set up what a beach looks like over here in Olive. This. This was the dunes. So, if we just use this grass, if we use it with some dirt interspersed, then it might look better. But this is really, really green. Yeah, it should definitely be dingier. Nothing is this green. Nothing is this light green, unless it's poisonous. Alright, well, I need some gravel for a parking lot. That's the first thing I need. I need some gravel for a parking lot, and I need some... Here's the other thing. I'm going to cut this short. I need some dirt. So, give me that. Oh, this area wasn't finished. Well, of course not. What am I saying? I know it wasn't finished. I'm still working on it. The game is freaking out at me because I'm trying to draw. Well, that's just way too much of a contrast. We need a different grass. We're running... It says we're running at high frames, but we're not. The game just can't handle it at all. The lesson is not to try and move your cursor at the same time and things will work a little bit better. But the real lesson is not to use the 5-meter grid anymore. And that sucks, because the 5-meter grid makes life so much better. Oh, this is actually quite nice. The thing that you can do with this is take advantage of the fact that it's freaking out and use it to mix up a texture. I actually quite like this tropico grass. Okay, so we have dirt, we have tropico grass, which is honestly kind of looking ugly now. We need more dirt, really. That's what we need. Because this would be the place where you put your car or whatever. We've got sort of a path here. You've got sort of a path here with sand. And there should be some gravel involved, but I don't have a gravel texture on me. Let's go grab one. Maybe, preferably from near the beach. Where? Let's get that. Yeah, so the tropico grass has stopped looking good. So I think I'm gonna put gravel underneath the gravel road instead of dirt. That might become procedure. I think I might just use gravel over here instead of dirt. And this area is going to become just gravel through and through, maybe with a couple of dots of sand in there. I was just down the beach recently, so I should know what this all should look like. Because it's modeled after a very small version of the Roy Carpenter's beach. Very small. Okay, now let's smatter the tropico grass on this side just to make things symmetrical, and I'll see if I still like it or not. Or still don't like it, I guess, in any case. Like that. Sometimes texturing really is everything. And I think the thing that we need, though, I think in this case texturing isn't everything. I think the next thing we need is really some grass to sort of top it all off. And I think that adding that on top of where we have the tropico grass is going to make the difference. Just sort of random thickets of grass that have grown around here. And I mean, they should be a little bit more regimented, but the fidelity in this game is not high enough for that to matter. You can't see that much specific stuff. So yeah, you can't zoom in that much, and there are definitely some things. There are definitely some assets that you can use that are way too small, I think. Are just way too small to the point where nobody will ever really see them. So I don't get why they exist. I don't remember what it was, but Weibel definitely found something that fit that criteria the other day. We're going to go over to Evans Island and grab the grass. Actually, I can grab it off of here. Show me the grass. Oh, I don't even need to see it. I can just click on it. We're flying back across the ocean. We're working so close to Olive, it's weird. I haven't worked over here in a really, really long time, so it's weird for me to be this close. We are getting much closer to Mason Valley, though. I'm looking forward to that. I'm terrained out, and maybe for a while. You know, we have all this to do. If I don't feel like building terrain, there are definitely other things that I can occupy my time with, and there are plenty of good things that I can occupy my time with. You know, it's not just like, oh, you know, I'm wasting time because I'm coming up with things. No, I have to fill this area with something, and I'm trying to keep the map alive. You know, if the area in between towns is just blank and it's green and it's got forest or whatever, that's not what I'm going for. There isn't enough going on there for me to be happy about what's going on there. You know, I need for there to be something. And so that's why I'm sort of taking it upon myself, I guess, to add some things, to add some life to this area. And this area, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's getting better or getting worse, but we'll have it. We'll have Treadway Beach, and that'll be that. And I know I'm over time, but it's okay. You guys can have a little bit longer of an episode while I fill in this grass. So, I do hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys liked my thoughts on the Housatonic. If you didn't, don't say a word. No, I'm kidding. If there was something that you disagreed with, feel free to say something. If there's something you agreed with, also feel free to say something. I just want some feedback. I want to know what's running through your heads after being dumped on with that series of ideas, with that pile of ideas that, you know, I'm sure some of them are good, some of them are bad. People are going to have different reactions to different things. Everyone likes different things anyway. You know, if you guys, like Titfield Thunderbolt especially, say something. If you think that it's worth doing this. Obviously, I'm not trying to sell it to a Hollywood producer and make big bucks off it. I would like to put it somewhere. I'd like to finish it and have it and if not show it off, send it to somebody who might try to do something with it. But it's not like it's not like this is my attempt at a big break. This is just me having an idea and writing about it. So, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you next week. Trainman out.